Hey everybody, welcome back. My name is Deborah Peters and thank you for tuning into the Deborah Peters Show. We go live every Tuesday at 12 noon Pacific and 3 p.m. Eastern Time. So make sure you get that into your calendar and you never miss an episode. We're live on Facebook, on LinkedIn, and on YouTube. So just search for the Deborah Peters Show on all of those platforms and you can be right here with us, adding comments and asking questions and getting to engage with my guests. Let me tell you a little bit about this show and why I created it. I've been traveling around the world for about 20 years, coaching, training, speaking, and I've had some pretty cool experiences in doing that, getting to do work in other cultures and help companies grow. And then taking that information back to different cultures that don't think like that. And I thought, you know, what we need coming out of the pandemic is we really need a show that is going to focus on consciousness, because the most important thing we all need to be right now is super duper self-aware. And so that's what this is all about. It's all about your consciousness. And so we cover 5 major pillars: health, wealth, relationships, self-expression, and business. Now, I guess if you look in a biblical way, the top 4 are mentioned, but I added in the business topic because, I mean, let's face it, we all have to make money and we're in business in some fashion. So I wanted to demystify this idea of business being about struggle, hardship, and failure, and actually get the message out to the world that business success is really about your consciousness too. So that's why we're doing this, and I hope it helps you in your life and that you're able to apply some of these tools. Definitely hit the like button, subscribe, comment. That super duper helps grow the channel, and we're on every major podcast platform. Post live show. This goes up on every major podcast platform, wherever you might listen to a podcast, from iTunes to Rumble, Spotify, SoundCloud, we're everywhere. So thank you for being here. Really love you and appreciate you. And stay till the end and I'll share with you a couple of live seminars, the last ones of 2023 that I have on the calendar. And so before we get into our next guest, I want to just say this. We're in a very interesting time. Humanity's going through all sorts of changes. And I really want to encourage you to be gentle with yourself and to be kind to others. You don't have to like them. You don't have to agree with them. Just remember that kindness never goes out of style. And that's my favorite mantra. So today's guest is Lena Athena, and she's phenomenal. She's done some pretty amazing things with her life. Very admirable. She's a TEDx speaker. She's been on the county commissioner of the status of women. Is that correct?
County commission on the status of women. Yep.
Okay, commission. I butchered it. She's traveled around the world with her husband, and my favorite part, I think, is that she's a Bollywood dance instructor. And I love Bollywood music. I love Bollywood dance. I just love everything about that. So welcome. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here today.
Yeah, it's really, really good. And so how did you make that transition? It sounds like you were in a nonprofit in a leadership role, and then you transitioned to the coaching that you're doing now. What inspired that?
Yeah, I think, there's like the long story and the short story, right?
Always, yes.
Originally, I really wanted to be a middle school counselor when I was younger. I've always had the desire to help people and to do the deep one-on-one work. And, through a lot of like personal growth and experimentation, I found myself really loving the nonprofit world and like the amount of people you can impact at once.
Yeah.
And when I was in this role, focused on educational equity, and I was also on a county commission, I found that one of the common questions I would get from the women around me were like, hey, you're really young. How did you end up here? People listen to you. You know, you're not shy to speak up. What's up with that? Like, do you work really hard? Do you study? Do you prepare what you say? And a lot of it, to me, I was like, oh, no, I don't actually work that, like, I work fewer hours than a lot of my coworkers, and I'm not pushing myself here. I didn't show up here because of pushing myself. I showed up here because of like believing in myself, respecting myself, all of the like the inner work that I feel people don't talk about enough. And so it was just this like natural, fun, juicy thing where I would get to help women, and I got so excited about it. And eventually I was like, okay, I have to do this full time.
So really, I love that you're saying this, because I talk to business owners all the time about, and I just said it in the intro, business success is not about how hard you struggle and to expect to fail and grind. And God, I hate that concept, that statement, go grind it out. Like, it's admirable to put yourself in a state of disrepair just to eke out a living. It's so really what it sounds like to me is this has all been about an inner alignment journey for you.
Absolutely. For me, like when I first, got my degree and I was like, what am I doing with my life? Where's my impact? How do I operate? I went into this very natural phase that I think a lot of people go through, both in a 9-to-5 career, whether they're doing freelance, whether they're doing business, which is to look externally and go, okay, what does it look like to be successful? What are the metrics people use? And then how do I measure myself by those metrics?
Yes.
And that was a very, very exhausting multi-year journey I went on, where I found myself like overworking like crazy, overweight, because I wasn't taking care of myself. I was just so focused on chasing these, like, I didn't even know what I was chasing, frankly. I wanted respect. I wanted more money. I wanted very basic things, but there wasn't an alignment between me and the work that I was doing in terms of like, this is my goal, this is the impact, this is what I want. And it was a journey to wake up one day and go, okay, my life kind of sucks right now, and I'm not fulfilled. And I analyzed why I got there, because I'm an analytical person, but it was like, well, it's not about how I got here. How the heck do I get out of this? Like, what do I do?
Yeah, turn the focus, right?
Yeah. And it was through a lot of reflection that it took the strength and the bravery to say, okay, I got here because I was measuring myself by other people's metrics. What are my metrics? What are my values? Who do I really want to be? Like, if I knew that no matter what, I wouldn't get validation, which, by the way, whatever I was getting wasn't hitting me in my heart, because it wasn't in alignment with my value system anyway. And that's part of the chasing. And so when I realized, you know what, maybe if I actually can validate myself, maybe if I can figure out, like, what is the version of me I would be the best at validating, and just kind of simplify and go, okay, let me go after those goals. Let me really reconfigure. And it sounds very magical when I say now, like, oh, and then I wound up in a nonprofit role and I got to climb my way up.
Right.
Yeah, but the reality was, because I wasn't so focused on getting other people to think what I was doing was great anymore. What I was doing was going, okay, there are things to be done in the world that I genuinely care about, and I'm going to show up and I'm going to do them to the best of my abilities every day. And where are the places that I can do those things that, regardless of whether anybody notices, I'll be happy I did it. I'll notice I did it, and it'll mean something to me. And that shift in focus and practicing it over time, it was like, well, then people started to notice, because I respected myself. I appreciated myself. I admired myself, because I was finally doing the kind of, impact and service and like being the person that I really was like, that's a cool chick. Like, she's doing some good stuff. And
you said some magic words there, because that's what I would call like a spiritual awakening. Where you did like a 180 with yourself, and you said, the way I'm pushing at the world or pulling at the world to get it to notice me is actually making me unhealthy. So there has to be another way. What is that other way? Let me experiment. And then being willing to explore that, which really requires a curiosity. And you explore that, and then the clues are there. Like it starts to reveal itself, doesn't it? Where it's like, okay, this is another way. This is another approach. This is another perspective. This is a new way of perceiving the possibilities that you haven't explored yet. And when you start to trust that, this is what I'm hearing you say, when you start to trust that, then it actually really starts to blossom. And because you didn't have any attachment to being validated externally. And that in and of itself will set a person free.
Yeah, absolutely. That was the biggest shift in terms of my belief that I realized that validation that's external will never stimulate me or fulfill me like internal validation would. And I think learning about myself, not in terms of what do I like, you know, what activities I like, what feels fun in the moment, but really that long-term vision of myself of like, what are my values? What do I stand for? Like, what am I willing to suffer for to make happen in this world? And then I wasn't exhausting myself to please other people. All of a sudden I was like, no, I'm just really focused. Like when I focus, I'm focused, and I'm able to really deliver, and I'm able to see it from multiple angles because I'm not pushing my mind to engage with my reality anymore. It's just super freaking authentic, and it happens so much more naturally, and it's way more fun.
You're in creator mode instead of joiner mode. You know, I always get asked to join all these groups. Yeah, come join us. And, you know, we'll help you build your business bigger. And I'm like, how are you going to do that? Well, you know, you just join us and you'll meet more people. And my statement is, I'm not a joiner. You know, if you want me to come in and do a leadership program, I can do that, but I don't join for the sake of joining. And I think a lot of people are caught up in that. They're just like, oh yeah, that if I join, then I'll grow, things will get better for me. It's like, who says? There's no evidence procedure to that. But there is an evidence procedure to what you're stating, which is I'll create it on my terms, and it'll align with my values and what I want myself to express myself as. Therefore, it has to show up that way. I mean, that's quantum physics 101.
Yeah, I think to mirror back to what I heard that you said that I think is like super, super important for anybody who wants to love themselves, right? I think like we all love ourselves at different degrees.
Sure. Agreed.
But it was really interesting because, you know, as I talked about earlier, the way I got started was a lot of women, they were such leaders. Like their mentality is not the mentality of a follower or you know, what you call the joiner, right? They were leaders on the inside, but it wasn't translating because we are tribal species. We are wired to know that our safety zone is in agreement with others. Yes. I mean, that's the truth. Like that's the emotional safety zone. And so unless you can create so much emotional safety for yourself and expand beyond that, you can be as innovative, creative, like inspirational on the inside as you want to be. But it takes a lot of emotional resources and like surreal self-trust is what I call it, to be able to really show up and go, oh yeah, I can lead on the outside. I can be different. I can be quirky. I can be weird. I can be misunderstood, and that will be okay.
Yeah. And it's okay. That's huge. You know, because we're pack animals, technically. So nobody really ever wants to be misunderstood, you know. And what's that quote? Seek first to understand and then to be understood. And that, you know, That's a really deep, like that's got a lot of layers to it. But the most important layer, I think, is that you let go of this need, this innate need to be understood. And, I always look at that from a spiritual maturity perspective. People can't understand others. They can barely understand themselves. So how can they possibly understand someone else when they have no idea what that person is experiencing and from what perspective they're experiencing it?
Yeah. Yeah. One of the things I've been thinking about a lot this last week is, where we spend our time and energy. Like I'm a big, like your time and energy are your most valuable resources. And
It's all you've got.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's interesting to me how, there's this thing called like, we have a society, we have a culture, we have norms, and a lot of time and energy go into fulfilling norms. And it's like this very natural response to go, oh, the things that I notice visually, that I can see, that I can hear, that I can feel about other people and enjoy are the things I'd like to give other people. Right. And it's like, yeah, but there's an internal journey each person is having that, you might not be able to pick up on unless they communicate.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that our job is then to focus on our external communication as much as we do.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And really be present. The more present we can be with someone, the better or the more aware we can be of ourselves as well. It's we're so connected in that way that I think that's why multitasking caused so many problems for people, is that just scattered their focus to the point where it exhausted their adrenals, and it broke down their immune system, and affected their nervous system. And then you get wired for that, and so then it's like, I have to have more to do, to your point where you just kind of like backed out of that. That's like an addiction. How did you do that? That's an addiction for most people.
Yeah, I it has some addictive qualities for sure. And I think frankly, education helps, like just understanding the biology of things in terms of
Yes.
the desire for the dopamine hit and what can give that to me. And are there alternative ways I can get a hit, but it'll be a lower hit and maybe it'll be healthier. And so that was one piece of it, was just really like,
that's brilliant, really.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, that's like a switcheroo. It's like, okay, I still need the dopamine, but maybe I could make a better choice to receive it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then the next step is, do I really need the dopamine?
Yeah.
Because now you're making choices. Whereas prior to that, there's no choice. It's just like, I need the dopamine, give it to me now.
Well, like with I don't know if it's just with addictions. In fact, I think it's not. I think it's with any life experience, there's a desensitization, right? Like, that if you like put the volume up real high on your headphones, your phone will be like, hey, there's a warning. This is
pretty
too
high. Yeah.
Yeah. And the reason for that is because, well, we're not meant to be stimulated very much as a species. And our brain is freaking brilliant. It'll compensate for that. And so I think a lot of the personal growth aspect, like the internal journey, is going, any lack of self-awareness that I have is almost entirely because I've desensitized myself to my reality in the way that I've experienced it over and over again.
Yeah. In some cases, that's a survival strategy.
Yeah, absolutely. And, interestingly, I think the majority of people are in survival mode in this beautiful, abundant reality where like the majority of us don't have to be anymore, but we are. Like there's always, people say like there's always that invisible tiger around the corner. I think giving yourself permission to sit with the crappy feelings is like one of the best gifts you can give yourself as a person, because it really did take a lot of retraining my mind to not try to escape discomfort.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, like a lot of the addiction to doing or to anything is trying to not be present with discomfort. And so it's like if you can be present with it for like 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, like the longer you can be in discomfort without reacting, without being in this state of feeling out of control, I think the more power you have over your life. And that's why, even though my work started out very much like, career and leadership focus, because people come to me because they're like, hey, I have these metrics, I have these goals, I have, whatever. But the reality is the majority of the time is spent on like, okay, and what can we do to make you feel powerful? What can we do to make you respect yourself? Because that's where your ability to influence your life comes from. It's from your ability to not focus on what feels out of control and not be reactive to the discomfort, but to be like actively present with what you really do care about and want to create more of.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally get you. I think that self-respect is it's everything, and most people don't have it. They either weren't taught it or it was stripped from them, and they don't know how to recapture it.
And it's not binary, right? I'm sure you know this, but it's like, it's not binary. A lot of the time people think respect is something you either have or don't. And it's like,
right.
Well, that really is dismissive to the amounts that you do have. And it's also, it's very like non-cooperative with the rest of the world to go into that state.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's really important to understand that like respect does start on the inside, and it starts with not trying to fix yourself, which a lot of people are under the illusion they need to be fixed. And it's like, well, if you think you need to fix yourself and that you're broken and you're not good enough, and then you ask another person, and then you ask another person to make up for those feelings. It's like, well, that's not how it works. You have to make up for the feelings yourself and heal them.
It's back to that self-awareness, right? And if you think you're broken, like I always tell my clients this, it's like the old school concept of you being an onion, where we need to keep peeling back the layers till we get to the good stuff, is actually antiquated mind tech. What we've come to discover is we're really a nucleic sphere, which means the more you look for what's wrong with you, the deeper down the black hole you'll go, and the longer the list of what's wrong with you will become. So everything seems to be like this self-fulfilling prophecy. If you just have to focus on what's good about you, and 10% or 10 minutes of that in the morning to start your day can send your whole life in a different direction after a few days of that, where you're just totally on top of the world.
Yeah, one thing I love to tell people, and that I practice myself, is, because you need self-awareness, you need to know what your areas for improvement are, right? Like there's no escaping. You can't like, la, la, la,
I know.
But I try to focus on the gap, right? So it's like, this is who I was. And it's really easy for who I was to be who I am if I'm not like super proactive about building momentum in a different direction, right? But I can take who I was and I can go, okay, and who I am is already better because I have this self-awareness. And so there's a slight gap between the two. And so I'm not that version of me that was unaware that she was doing those things. And then now my job is not to be mad at that old version, but it's to just grow the gap. Like whatever I can do to increase the gap. And that way you can remember, like, I used to kind of suck at this, or, whatever, without going, I do suck at XYZ, because you're like, no, there's already a gap. I just need to grow that gap.
Yeah, absolutely. And you said it, you nailed it when you said putting the focus into the direction You want to go to where you want to be and who you want to be, you know? It's really that simple. It's not easy, you know? You got a lot of bandwidth built up on the old way of being, but it's totally doable. Just like I said, you do it in little increments. I'm sure that's what you must have done. It was like in increments. You didn't throw your whole life out the door and just like, you know,
I mean, I'm a
did
fun
you?
risk taker, so I'm like, well, no more of that.
Is that what took you traveling?
Um, that's not what took me traveling, but although, I mean, I think in some ways, you know, new experiences always help with becoming that next version of yourself, right? Like
Yeah,
if you can change your environment, you have an easier time changing your identity.
100%.
But yeah, like you were saying, it's a balance between you still have a life that's going to remind you of who you are. I think that's why so many people struggle with their family, by the way. It's like your family remembers so many freaking versions of you, right?
Usually the version where you were least evolved.
Yeah, well, or you know, the version that was the easiest for them to interact with.
Yeah,
Yeah.
good analogy.
Yeah, like I think it has nothing to do with you, and we take it. I used to take it so personally, like, oh my gosh, you think I'm that person, and I'm like, got it. Okay, cool. That's the version of me that was easiest for you to understand, or easiest for you to communicate with, or easiest for you to go along with, or I was super agreeable, so that just made it, you know, easy for you
Easiest,
to
you
go
were
along
the
with.
easiest version of you to control.
Yeah, or whatever people want. Some people want control, some people want intimacy, some people want, you know, like we all have very different intrinsic desires and feelings that we value. Like, some people really, really do want control, and others are not control people. It's, you know, more about like they prefer attention, right? And so, whatever, I think like there's beautiful clues in, okay, so that version of you, of me, gave you something that I don't maybe give you now, and that's why you're not kind of like catching up as to who I am today. So by no means am I telling people that you don't have to go and sit down and analyze and figure out how to give what you can from the version you are. In fact, most people aren't in that place. But when I'm in that place and when I have the resources, I find it's actually really useful to go, how do I give you the feelings that you really, really want in a way that's authentic to who I am right now? And I'm not compromising. Yeah.
Yeah, really good. Because then you're actually driving the bus.
Yeah. And I like to drive the bus.
Sure. And how do you find they respond? Do they kind of dig in their heels a little, or are they in receptive mode?
It depends on the person. It depends how I'm communicating.
Yeah,
Right.
sure.
I believe that power struggles, as annoying as they are, serve like a really, really important emotional tool for us, which is they keep us present with the discomfort we have in a relationship so that we don't forget about it.
Mm-hmm.
And when I find myself in power struggles, which I think will always happen in different ways and to different extents, I understand that, okay, there's like a super ultra authentic version of me that I'm really holding on to being right now, because that's my default. Like, I really value authenticity. And then there's this more community part of me that really wants to be in connection to this other person. And like, how can I be the version of myself that gets to do both?
Yeah.
And if I'm calm about it and I really like, I've found the solution for how I get to do both, be in community and understand like this other person has wants and needs that might make me uncomfortable, but I want to work around it. And I'm going to do it in a way that is entirely authentic to me. If I found that solution, it's a lot easier for me to communicate and get what I want.
Sure.
If I don't see what that thing is, sometimes it comes out kind of annoying.
Presents itself. Yeah. Yeah, no, that's really good. So let's talk a little bit about power struggles.
Mm-hmm.
So there's often power struggles, and you know, I always say there's no game if you don't play. So how would you not play in a power struggle?
Ooh, well, my favorite thing to do, because I mean, if there's a power struggle, then whatever options have already been displayed as like the different choices we can make as a team right now, clearly there is not a single one that both parties or all parties involved.
Yeah.
So first thing I like to do is remind myself that I'm not working within the realm of like the options I see right now. I can do literally anything, and I need to zoom out and think about other options. I find that already calms me down, because then I don't feel cornered into moving forward quickly and choosing for what's in front of me, and like that tension. The other thing that's really helpful is to just remember, what do I and this other person have in common? Because there's always something, right? Like whether you like, even if you don't particularly care about each other with, you know, whomever this person is, you care about something in common. Like you and your boss both want the team to have a good outcome. You might have a different definition of what a good outcome is, but that's what you want. You know, you and your parent both want to have a family you enjoy, but like you might have a different definition of what that looks like. But just focusing on like, okay, we have a desire that we share, and that puts me in a more emotionally secure state from which to be less reactive. And then the third thing to do, I think, is like invite vulnerability with the other person, because the other person's in power struggle because it's for the same reason that you are, which is that they believe that you care about something so strongly that you care about it more than you care about them.
Right.
And that's why they're struggling for your attention or for control or whatever feeling it is that they tend to love, right? And if you can give them the attention and the control, or, you know, whatever feeling they're missing, by going, hey, I also kind of don't like this right now, right? You share that feeling, like we both don't like this, and we don't like the options. Okay, listen, I want to do a good job listening to you and hearing you out. Like I have some really, really freaking strong feelings right now, but before I tell you about mine, I want to hear about yours, because I know this sucks for you as much as it does for me. Like if you can bring yourself to do that, oh my gosh, you have so much freaking power in that conversation. It's just ridiculous, because now the other person is not looking at you as the enemy. Like they're either shocked or confused or thrilled, but it's a very, very different feeling with a lot less tension than the force of opposition. Honestly, 99% of the time from there, in my own experience, my clients, people I've seen, like you can resolve pretty freaking easily from that point.
That's really cool. Yeah. Get on the same page with them.
Yeah. Emotionally on the same page. Even if you don't have the same solution, if you can be emotionally on the same page, that's 99% of it.
Yeah, because usually when people are struggling for control, it's because they feel out of control. So they're looking to control something outside of them in hopes that it'll make them feel more secure inside. Obviously, it doesn't work, but they don't know that, right? So they're just looking to make that step toward, okay, I'm going to take control of this thing, and then I'll feel better about myself. But really what's happening is they just internally with themselves on a personal level, emotional, whatever it might be, they just feel completely out of control with themselves. And maybe their whole lives, who knows what they're experiencing.
Yeah, and I've yet to meet a single person who is able to give themselves the feelings they want 100% of the time.
I know, it's true.
Yeah.
Humanity needs to evolve to that. Because I think that's a real sort of choke point in terms of personal growth, is that and we've been so conditioned to be this way for eons. You know, Jerry Maguire, you complete me.
I think, yeah, that's one of the core tenets of the work that I try to do with people. I work with mostly women, and I think we tend to be very high empathy, and then we tend to grow a lot of resentment, either towards the empathy or towards the feelings of the other person, because we're like, now you're making me feel this too. You know, you're making me feel guilty, ashamed, sad, whatever. And I say whatever because it's like you could put in any feeling there, and if you take on other people's feelings when like you have enough of your own to deal with,
Yeah.
it's just not a bandwidth we're built to have. And so a lot of the work that I do is like, how can you be empathetic, but feel your own feelings and only your own feelings? Like, be aware of other people's feelings, honor other people's feelings, respect other people's feelings, accept other people's feelings, but feel only your own feelings, because that is all you have the bandwidth to do.
Yeah, 100%. That's a great sort of ending note. So how do people find you?
All right, so on Instagram, it's going to be at Lena S. Athena. There's my website, lenaathena.com. I do actually have a personal power journal for anybody who wants to download it. So if you go to my website and just scroll all the way down, you're going to see it. And you can also add me on LinkedIn if you'd like.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's really great. And so what's next for you? Where are you headed next with your growth, your life?
I think being more vulnerable and sharing more about how I have come to the realizations that I have as a person. It's really easy to come from a place of knowing, but I'd really like to come from a place of just like feeling. Like, this is how I felt. This is who I've become because of how I felt. This is how I get to feel now. And I think it's a more, like you said, it's a more vulnerable place where we can all feel a little bit more connected.
Yeah, 100%. And then there isn't this like defense mechanism. It kind of takes that all down. That's really good.
How about you?
Oh, there's just so much happening in my world. And thank you for asking. I'm going through another metamorphosis in my life. And I have a tendency to do these big geographical shifts, you know, when I'm expanding my awareness. So I'm in the middle of like really pondering what the next step is, and it's still unfolding and revealing itself. I do have some distinct clarity around one thing for sure, and that is I'm over living in the city. Like I came from a farm, couldn't wait to leave, couldn't wait to get to the city and just do all that, you know, girl in the city life. And now I'm just like, I'm looking to buy some land and move into the country, and I'm willing to make the drive for business, because after being in LA for 20 years, you know, you can take 2 hours to do 10 miles. So I figure if I spent 45 minutes driving from the country into the city to meet clients, so what, right? If I'm going to do a seminar or something, it's like, but ideally at some point, I'll have it all set up in a rural area where my clients can come to me and they can escape themselves, even if it's just for a day. So that's really, it's interesting because that makes my life like a 360, you know, that's a full circle existence.
I love farm life from what I've seen. I haven't like lived it, but it's so you could see the smile on my face. I was like, I really just want to spend like a year on a farm, just like chickens and goats.
Yes. And you know, I have a tendency, like when I take little micro breaks during the day, I'll watch shorts on YouTube about farming, or I used to barrel race, and you know, like I used to drive the tractor, and just all of those kinds of experiences. I was 10 years old when I learned how to drive a manual transmission pickup truck and would drive the food for the meals out to the fields. And I was like so short, I couldn't reach the clutch and the gas at the same time. You know, I had to like shift my body plus steer and shift the gear. It was a 3 on the tree. And man, you know, I watch those and I go, wow, I'm so blessed to have had that upbringing, and I can't wait to get back to some version of that, a modernized kind of version of that, where I can give that gift to my clients so they can have that feeling of freedom. Nothing feels better than being in Mother Earth.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So thank you for being here today. It's been a great conversation. Give you your URL to your website again.
It's lenaathena.com.
Awesome. Thank you, Lena. You have a blessed day.
Thank you.
And, Godspeed. Wish you all the best.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye. Hey, remember everybody, stay aligned, stay alert, and stay awake.